Hi guys, Danielle here from Test Obsessed, and today I'm bringing you a quick video tutorial on dealing with scientific passages on the TOEFL. I want to focus on science passages because I have worked with many students who feel most intimidated by the scientific reading passages. If you are maybe not the strongest student in science classes in high school or college, but you know you'll still have to deal with some sort of scientific reading passage come test day, these tips are for you. So let's begin. When it comes to scientific reading passages in particular, the test tends to be very generous when it comes to giving you information. One way they do this is by utilizing the glossary, so you should too. The glossary is when the test gives you specific definitions. You don't have to find them, they're provided for you. You'll see a number and a footnote at the bottom for you to follow along with to get an exact definition. If they do this for you, make sure you utilize it. The second one, which also deals with vocabulary, is about making sure you know how to find definitions. This means recognizing phrases that are frequently used for introducing a definition. For example, phrases like something something means that, or having the commas for an appositive, or having parentheses or dashes are often good indications that you have been given a definition and should pay close attention to it for paraphrase purposes when you get to your detailed questions. For many, some of the most difficult questions when it comes to scientific passages are the inference questions. Inference questions can be tricky no matter what the subject matter is, but when it comes to science passages, the TOEFL tends to be a little bit nicer to us in that way. Make sure you try to make the easy inferences first. For example, if you have a sentence like our example on the screen, unlike other elements, noble gases do not easily form compounds. Well, now you know that noble gases are types of elements. So make sure that you are not dismissing a question too fast. The right answer might actually be the most obvious one, especially when it comes to inferences. When you are dealing with scientific passages, frequently you will get examples or analogies to help you better understand the material. In other words, if you are reading a passage about how in physics they are trying to develop space engines that go faster, and all of a sudden, after reading about different methods of constructing wings and different ways of making pistons more effective, you see something referring to toys or animals or something that seems completely unrelated to the passage, it's not necessarily that you've misunderstood. Instead, they're trying to make it easier by giving you something that seems more tangible, something that seems more everyday, realistic, or more real world. So going from something that people don't normally have to deal with, like making a spaceship that goes faster, to something that they have had experience with, like playing with a toy car, might be exactly what you see and is what they intended you to read. Same thing when it comes to other disciplines within science. So if you're talking about animals and they're explaining the structure of a spine for a certain animal, or they're explaining how the wing is curved on a certain bird and they compare it to something every day, again, you may not have misunderstood. You may just be finding the example or analogy designed to make it easier for you. When it comes to scientific passages, you are frequently dealing with difficult words. Many times you can eliminate those words. Don't stop and try to figure out every single word. This goes for any type of reading passage, but in particular, scientific reading passages, if you can substitute an easier word, so that way you're not dealing with that same challenging word over again, or eliminate it completely, you might not even need to answer a question about it. So go ahead and do so. Remember, rhetorical questions are those types of questions that are dealing with the nature of expression itself. Rhetorical questions often get readers to contemplate an issue before the answer is provided. So if you get a sentence that says something like, have you ever wondered something, 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 it's going to provide you with the answer, or at least what some scientists would think is the answer. So make sure to use those. One of the biggest complaints that I would hear about scientific passages is seeing those units of measure and feeling like you need to know all of them. So whether it's talking about kilometers or inches or pounds or anything else, most of the time is not going to be asking you to actually do those conversions. So if you see units of measure, do not immediately panic and think that you cannot do this. Most of the time, they won't matter. Come up with something in your head that you can easily substitute it for, just like we said before, and keep going with the passage. When it comes to scientific passages, just like all the other passages on the TOEFL, know that detailed answers usually are always made in the same type of pattern for both right answers and wrong answers. Right answers usually use paraphrases, whereas the wrong answers frequently will draw information from other parts of the passage, so that way you recognize it and you inadvertently think that it is the right answer. In particular, when it comes to scientific passages, you might see and maybe even panic because you don't recognize some of the words because they're not even in English. Remember, a lot of scientific classifications come from Latin. So if you see a two-word phrase that does not look like a combination of words that go together in English, and they will be italicized, so they're written in that font that is kind of slanted, that means that you have the scientific name for that particular animal or plant, whatever is being discussed. So don't worry, you're not missing anything. It's just the official scientific name. So be sure to look out for that. The last piece of advice, and I think one of the most helpful, is to anticipate what is coming in the reading passage. That means that for each of the disciplines within science, you really want to make sure that you're familiar with some of the most common terms that are likely to come up, and definitely the most common structures in terms of the reading passages. In other words, if you have a chemistry reading passage, it will likely be set up a little bit differently than a reading passage that focuses on biology or astronomy, for example. By getting to know each of those smaller disciplines within science, by figuring out those words that are most important before test day, especially if it's a more abstract concept, you will go in confident each and every time. Want to know more about those? Don't worry, next week you'll get a new video which features one specific discipline, so stay tuned. I hope that these quick TOEFL tips for dealing with scientific reading passages will help you improve your score and reach your goals. If you like this video, please be sure to subscribe and follow us on Instagram for even more TOEFL vocab. You can find us at GetTestObsessed and at GetTestObsessed.com. Thanks. See you again soon.